record here. All right, Dr. Perry Nickelston, thanks so much for being on the show today. It is great to have you this morning. You have been a great role model to a lot of people with your podcasting, with just the way that you've gotten so outside of the box with your chiropractic. And from the start of this podcast, when I started it maybe 3 months ago, I had it in my mind that, oh my gosh, I've got to get Perry Nickelston on the show. He's going to be awesome. And it wasn't until maybe a couple of weeks ago that I was talking to Dr. Kathy Dooley. And after my interview with her, she was saying, oh, well, you've got to have Perry on the show. You're going to get him on the show, right? And I was like, well, okay, Kathy, I really want to have, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous. I've never met him before. And she was like, he's the nicest guy in the world. You have to get him on your show right now. So thank you, Kathy, for telling me to reach out to you. And I just appreciate your time to be on here today.
Well, thank you very much for having me on and for the kind words. It really does mean a lot. Yeah, Kathy and I are really good friends. We go way back for sure. And she's, as you know, she's a great human being. So
yeah, she absolutely is. Yeah.
Well, Perry, I'm excited, man. We'll talk about anything you want.
Yeah. Hey, you've done some different stuff in chiropractic. I mean, you're not the norm. And I'm really curious because I'm kind of the same, you know, I'm not a chiropractor. I'm a massage therapist, personal trainer, but I'm kind of that mutt. I'm kind of that hybrid. And I'm curious for you, when did you go through chiropractic and realize, wait, this isn't the right thing for me. I've got to do something different here.
Well, I knew it was a piece of the puzzle for me, right? I got into chiropractic like many people do because it helped me get my life back again. I'll kind of give you a little bit of a background. You know, I've been a bodybuilder for most of my life, and I did many stupid things when I was younger, and did like most people. You just get hurt, you push your way through. That's the way it goes. But you know, one time I just couldn't get back up, and doing too many squats and not taking enough of a break. And then my training partner at the time said, you know, try chiropractic and help me. And it wasn't until about 2 years later that I thought about doing it myself, because I was at a kind of a crossroads in my life of what I wanted to do. And so I decided to go to chiropractic school. But honestly, I realized it wasn't what I thought it was going to be when I was actually studying to become one.
Okay.
So I already knew then that I wanted something more. I just didn't know what it was at that time frame, honestly. And you know, I got out and started practicing on the kind of the traditional way. I graduated Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. That's they call it the Fountainhead, because that's where the chiropractic was discovered by David Palmer, and then his son, D.D. Palmer, and his son. Brought it to the forefront. And I got out and just started practicing, and you know, it was okay, it was good, but I was very close to quitting, honestly, several times. And the only reason I didn't is because I was like, damn, I spent all this money, I better keep going. Honestly, that's what I said. And I knew that that's not the way I wanted it to be. I was missing my passion for it. And there's many people that just do chiropractic and they love it, right? Because it's fantastic. But for me, it just didn't resonate. And then through my own journey of searching, actually, it probably took me about 15 years beyond that to really start to kind of where I am now, or what I was searching for. I got out, and I just started thinking to myself, there's got to be more than just treating where it hurts. There's got to be way more than that, right? And then I just started to branch off and try to do many different things. First of all, with what I was doing with chiropractic, but in other places. So let's say if your back hurt, you know, I would do stuff to your back. But then I just started to treat all the other areas that didn't really hurt for you at the time, but we call those non-painful dysfunctions. So something doesn't move the way as efficiently as it could. Maybe it's not mobile enough, which means it doesn't move as much as it should. Or maybe it's not stable enough, which means it's able to resist movement well. And you can mix those two together, and we call that motor control, or we call that, you know, efficient movement. And I just started saying, holy cow, you know what? I'm taking care of all these other places that people don't physically feel pain in. And then the area of pain got way better. And that led me to the work of studying the work of Gray Cook, my foundational mentor, who's a physical therapist. And his whole premise was taking care of the non-painful dysfunction that can lead to, over the course of many, many years, and compensations and adaptations of what we call life, where you have pain. And then, you know, you treat pain and they get better. But I was like, why in the hell does this stuff keep coming back? Like, there's got
Yeah.
to be a reason, because the human body is really resourceful and resilient and dynamic. And we're not supposed to have stuff keep coming back all the time. We just get used to it
Hmm.
and we assume that it's normal. It's not normal, it's common. And, there's two different things. And then that's where Stop Chasing Pain, the name came from. That's my company, because it means treat pain with where it hurts, but don't get caught up in just going down that one rabbit hole. And my whole purpose, what makes me the most excited, is not really taking a look at the what of something, which is what we call like a disease name or whatever your condition is, but the why of something,
Hmm.
a deeper why, and of why it keeps coming back. That lit my fire, man. When I got a hold of that, and then I started to get more into looking at human movement, and then human movement led me down a rabbit hole of looking at the neuroscience and the brain. And it's really awesome, I gotta say, because I love thinking outside of the box, because unfortunately when I went to school in 1997, we had a lot more boxes there because we didn't have the technology we have today,
Yeah,
where
true.
we can do functional MRIs of the brain and see what's really going on compared to what we thought was going on. But I think the big takeaway is we were completely wrong on a lot of stuff.
Hmm.
And that's a big lesson for me, is that many of the things that we are hard driven to say that it's this way, it's not possible for the other way, I don't accept that at all anymore. Zero. Because tomorrow, most of the stuff that we think is proven right today or factual will be completely wrong tomorrow. You
Yeah.
see it all the time. So I don't
Hmm.
have a box anymore. I don't believe in boxes.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, how much flack did you get for that? I mean, going outside and wanting to, I mean, what kind of like hate mail was coming into your door from people? You're doing it wrong. You should be, changing professions. Like, what was the hostility from that?
Well, it was a lot for sure.
Yeah, I
Right? But,
imagine.
I'd like to look at that as that's just the universe testing how much you believe in something,
Hmm.
what your belief is in something, your resilience is in something, and it's looking for you to quit.
Hmm.
It's looking for you to bow out. And many people will do that because they just don't see things that you see yet. It's there, they just can't visualize it. So I took all that stuff in, and in the beginning, I took it personally. Honestly, it's kind of hard not to. But
Yeah.
when you look at the bigger picture of what you're trying to do, I took it upon myself to say, you know what, I'm just gonna try to frame it so they can see things in a different way than they're not seeing now. And anybody throughout history who tries to change the norm, you're always going to have that happen. You look at any discipline
Yeah.
whatsoever. I mean, we used to think the earth was freaking flat, man. I mean, and
Right.
somebody said it's round. Yes.
Right.
So for how many years did people ostracize that? They did that with people who had the germ theory. One of my favorite one is Semmelweis, where there was a time in history where doctors would go from doing autopsies to doing births without washing their hands and not wearing any gloves.
Crazy.
Yes, that kind of stuff happened. And then there was a high mortality rate for the women, especially, but for the infants. And then this guy Semmelweis said, well, there might be these things that you just can't see that are being transferred from the cadaver to the mother. And then traditional medicine vilified him, ostracized him for 5 more years and told him he was out of his freaking mind.
Hmm.
And then now you look back on it and you're like, are you kidding me? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
That's so
there all
basic
the
now.
time.
Yeah. That's so
And
obvious.
that's kind of the way I look at things now, is that the things that we come in and we discover, they didn't just magically appear. They've always been there. We just haven't had the coming from the right standpoint of ourselves to be open to see it. And then one thing I've discovered over the course of my life of being on this planet for 53 years, you only discover those things through a lot of pain and suffering. You never discover them when you're comfortable. Yeah. It's only when you're forced to look at something a different way. And that's kind of what happened to me, because of over time, I had a lot of injuries that weren't getting better from traditional chiropractic or traditional approaches. And then ended up getting the quote unquote we call autoimmune diseases, where you just something jumps you out of nowhere, which is flat out ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I just had to look for answers because I wasn't getting it on my own, right? And the only way you're ever going to discover anything new is to do not the normal. Because if you keep doing the normal, you're only going to get what you've always been getting. And I tell people, we've got a big problem. If you look around in the world today, people are not healthier. They're way sicker.
Yeah, true.
I don't care what anybody tells me. They're way sicker, right? Like I can save you with traumatic, life-saving things these days pretty damn well, right? Like if you get in a car accident or you've got a bleeder and you're about ready to die on the table, medicine's great, but they're really awful at the chronic pain, chronic disease, autoimmune things, because their mindset of one condition, one cause, like one condition, one cause. You can't approach that anymore. It's completely different mindset. And all you got to do is look around and talk to people that are in your life. Somebody's dropping dead left and right from cancer, or this person's got an autoimmune disease and this. And until we change stuff up or shake stuff up, I don't think we're going to find the answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, sometimes you've got to have that fire under you to actually make a change. I mean, change can be super painful, and literally a physical pain is actually going to change the way that you think. I mean, it's crazy, but it's so true. People have no idea how something might work or how their condition might work. And then they get into some serious, a physician, myself, I had back pain and I was always doing sit-ups all the time. And it wasn't until I finally realized, why on earth am I having a six-pack abs? This is totally not helping me. It's just making everything worse. Nobody told me that. I just finally got sick of being in pain and had to do something different. And it was like, oh, maybe I should like decompress, or I should do traction, or I should stretch every once in a while. That pain is a powerful motivator. Yeah.
Well,
and you're right.
That was a great segue into my definition of what pain is.
Oh, please do. Please define it.
Pain is a request for change.
That's great.
And sometimes the request is very nice, and your body's giving you little subtle hints. Dude, I really need you to change something up here, like maybe not do all these sit-ups or something, right? And then if you don't listen, or you try to smother it by giving something to deaden the symptoms, which doesn't mean you're fixing jack squat when you deaden symptoms. You just don't feel them anymore. And then all of a sudden the body has only one recourse. It's like, okay, well, now I'm really going to hurt you, man, because pain is the way that I'm going to get you to take action. So pain is not punishment. It feels like it at the time, but pain is the request for change. But pain is also an action signal. It's a motivator. It's a kick in your ass that you need to change. So otherwise, why would you? I mean, that's just the basic premise of the brain. I mean, if you're comfortable and cozy and safe, or you feel that way, I mean, why would you change? There's no reason to. But, it's only through that discomfort, right, or physical pain that'll motivate you to change something. And then one of the biggest takeaways for me is this: it's not necessarily what you add to your life that needs to be different, but what you stop doing that can make a difference.
Stop doing, like, what would you specifically need to stop do? If somebody's in pain, they've got to stop doing like a lifestyle thing or intake or
that's lifestyles and behaviors and your habits, right? Because that's probably going to be the one thing that contributed to why you are the way you are now, because that's what autoimmune disease and chronic disease are. They creep up over decades. And then the habits and behaviors, otherwise known as your environment. So you need to change your environment. It's the physical environment that you move in or you don't move. So let me give an example. So maybe you have to stop not moving so much, right? Or maybe you have to stop moving the same way all the time, right? And for you, it was, how about you stop doing those sit-ups? That one. Or how about you stop eating? So it's not like that you have to add all these great healthy foods in and change your diet 360. How about you just stop drinking damn soda for like a week and see how you feel? So it's a little bit easier to tiptoe in to something and change those lifestyles and behaviors and habits. That's one of the reasons why people are not successful in their long run when they're trying to change something in their life, because they try to change everything in one shot. Everything. So first of all, it's too much and you'll quit because it's too much effort. It's too much discomfort. and the brain doesn't like that. And plus, if you stop all that stuff or you start all these things, how do you know what did the most for you? So you have to tiptoe in nice and easy and slow. And that's what gives you the little and often over the long haul, we call that, or what I term little tiny action step, LTAs.
Yeah.
Like just try to do this one thing. Like a big one for me, for instance, when I was really, really sick, is I just stopped dairy and stopped taking whey protein, especially because I've been a bodybuilder since I was 13. I slam whey even in my sleep.
Yeah. Right.
And all that dairy was just massacring my system, right? Which is the one tip I can give everybody. I don't know, dairy doesn't do, in my clinical opinion, anybody any good. So you just stop that and you're like, holy cow, man, like I feel so much better. Like even those joints you've been trying to crack on me all the time or quote unquote manipulate or adjust, they feel better too. Does that make sense? Of course it does, because all the systems of the body work together. And as I always say, no system in the body ever works alone. It never gets injured alone, and it never heals alone. One of the biggest reasons that people struggle is because in healthcare today, specialists go after one system.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
Usually the one that you got symptoms on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing, is everybody is a specialist of something. And so then you get, and like, I understand that you want to have, you know, people have their niche, they have their specialty, they have their focus of something, but then they get tunnel vision. They get blinded to all the other things that are out there, and they have no concept that like, oh, your back pain could be visceral. It could be lymphatic. It could be emotional. It could be mechanical. It could, you know, people just think like, no, it's got to be, you know, lumbar spinal fusion. That's the only answer. I mean, it's like there could be a million different things. We've got to educate ourselves about all those different things. Get outside of that box, you know, get outside the matrix that we pulled down over our eyes so that we can see the truth that might be painful and start to connect the dots of what people have going on in their body, you know?
That's well said. You know, you generally, when you're a specialist, you kind of get what you look for, right? Oh,
Yeah.
and holy cow, he's got a knee problem too, right?
Yeah.
So, and I try to look more from a generalist standpoint. I think it takes way more to look at the body from a generalist standpoint and how systems work together. But I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, it's way easier to be a specialist than it is to be a generalist. Because you can focus all your effort on one thing. And there's a definition I read one time: as a specialist is somebody who knows more and more about less and less. And so you need to be able to look at the big picture when somebody goes in. But that's terrifying. I always quote people when I teach them about systems is this: nothing is more terrifying than the idea of unlimited possibilities. And that's what happens when a human being walks into your office, because it's the possibility of their entire lifespan, from even before they were physically born, while they're in utero. Shit's going sideways. And, you know, where do you begin? You're like, oh my God, I don't know where to begin. It could be so many things. Well, then you have to start from a logical standpoint of deal with the system that they came in with. But during your examination and your evaluation, you need to understand how all the other different systems work with that. And like this hierarchy of body systems, for instance, is the way that I look at the body, where every system in your body is important. Otherwise, you wouldn't have one. You know, like they're there, but some are more important than others. And I categorize that. How do you know what's more important? Well, it's very simple. The more that one system has an issue with it, the sooner you die faster.
Right.
Like, right. Yeah. So like your musculoskeletal system, to me, that's the least important one on the totem pole. That's the last thing I look at. So it's important, but it's not the big driver. The further you go up, for instance, right? I talk about lymphatics a lot. Lymphatics are way important in that stuff, because if your lymph goes, you're dead really fast, man. Like in a matter of no time, because you can't get rid of toxins and metabolic waste in your body, and you just die. And then, but you can live with a bad back. Who the hell knows how long, right? Right. But when your lymph goes, you're screwed. And then your brain sits above that. So your brain is kind of like the top dog in the food chain. But your brain has lymphatics too, called glymphatics. And that kind of traces me back to what we talked about before, because it used to be a time, honestly, when medicine didn't think you could physically change your brain at all. They
Right.
thought that you were born with a brain and then it decays and then you die. Now they know, oopsie daisy, we sort of got that one wrong. And then now it's called neuroplasticity, where your brain can remap different strategies based on your environment and your exposures and even your thought process. So you can change your brain. And it used to be a time when they didn't think that the central nervous system of the brain actually had its own waste management system of lymphatics. They missed it for all of those years, and all of a sudden they discovered it and said, well, you actually do have one of those up there. So in hindsight, when you look at that, I mean, I think people are actually moronic for thinking that there wasn't one there in the first place,
Right.
or that the brain can't change itself. But now we have to change our whole the way we conceptualize the body and how it functions.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that you have to look at the body as a priority system based on survival. Right? The quicker you're going to die when something goes wrong, the more important that system is, period.
Well, so that's really interesting that you would talk about the survival. And I want to know your opinions on kind of the idea of quality over quantity, because this is something I see, going back to the acute versus the chronic care that we have here in like the States. A lot of people focus on that quantity of life. I'm going to have a long life, preserve this person's life, keep them alive as long as possible. And the body is looking to survive. But, if we're somehow neglecting quality, how is that contributing? You're looking at the lymphatic system and seeing that that's huge for a person's survival, the quantity of their life. How long are they going to live? If your lymphatic system isn't working, okay, you're not going to survive. You got to have that system. You can survive with a low back problem. But then as somebody has their lymphatic system degenerate or something goes wrong with that, what's happening also to the quality of their life as well?
Right. Well, I mean, the beautiful thing about medicine is today it can keep us living longer than we've ever been able to, right? I mean, it wasn't too long ago, but the average lifespan of a human being was like 35 years,
Right.
Just because life was harsh.
Yeah.
Life was hard. And of course, you've got industrialization that makes things easier. Plus, you have much more community support, right? With people around you and your tribe. So you're not alone. That in itself is a survival mechanism. Your brain will do anything it possibly do, not for you to be alone, because it knows if you're alone, you're dead like in a day. Mm-hmm. So you'll do whatever it has to do to keep in the social good graces of your tribe or your community, which ties into the biopsychosocial model of pain. Bio means biology, psycho means how you think, social means your support network around you, right? So you can live longer, but look at how people are living. I mean, they can barely walk, they can barely move, they have aches and pains and chronic disease galore. I mean, we've got 10,000 freaking diagnosis names of stuff, right? That's going on that somebody can have. So I'm going to contend is like you're living longer, but what is the quality like? But I'm going to contend that you don't have to. You can live longer and live healthier at the same time. I mean, you just check out the book called Blue Zones. Blue Zones, you may have heard. It talks about places on the earth where you can live, where people live over 100 years old. Yeah. And some of the basic premises is they move like a ton, like all the time. And they're outside all the time. And they're in nature all the time. And they cultivate their own food, which is big, really big. Humans today, I mean, only if you can call what we eat food. Yeah. And even when you get so-called food, it's nutrient deficient, or it's sprayed with so many damn chemicals that you're killing yourself every time you eat something, even if it's quote unquote healthy. So, all these things that people are degrading with, that's the habits and the lifestyles that you're around. So just think about that. Like if you can change those factors of being outside a lot more in nature, and then you're moving a lot more, like up and down, like in all these cultures, they squat like a lot. They go up and they go down a lot. And then you cultivate and grow some of your own food, right? But in the world today, that's more inconvenient, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I tell people is one way you can actually help yourself get healthier is to do what we call inconvenient movement,
Hmm.
which means things that are not as easy for you to do. So it's way convenient to go to the fast food thing and I pay $1 and I get this whole freaking meal, as opposed to trying to grow it on my own. But you're probably not going to live as long when you do that. And it's way more convenient to sit my ass in a chair than it is to go down to the ground and sit on the ground like Indian style or try to attempt a deep squat.
Right.
And going outside, who the hell's got time for that? Like, I got stuff to do on my phone. I got to be near my iPad. I'm inside
Hmm.
with fluorescent lights. I'm getting zapped with about 50 different Wi-Fi things zooming through every cell in my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
And then I'm with my phone and I'm standing around 10 other human beings. I'm not saying a freaking word to them because I'm on my phone.
Hmm.
So that biopsychosocial model comes into play. And I'll be honest with you, I fear that we are on the crest of a tsunami of major chronic disease and
Oh yeah.
illness, and it's going to break the healthcare system. We
Oh yeah.
won't be able to keep, because it's not going to go in reverse unless the masses do it, especially when they launch this 5G stuff. You might as well
Oh
just
yeah.
fry your mitochondria right out of the gate.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The school that I lecture at, we have been like, we've been going to legislation and city hall like as a school, because I lecture at this one body therapy institute, and oh my gosh, everybody is like so hyped on pushing that back. It's crazy. But you're right, talking about the rural lifestyles and what you said earlier with like less is more, because it's like the more stuff we learn and we create for ourselves, as convenient as that stuff is. And I get it that like in the moment, patience is hard. Being uncomfortable does not feel good. And like in the context of our conversation, it sounds obvious. Like, yeah, duh, you should be more patient and you should seek discomforts, and that's good for your body. But in the moment, it's hard for people, and they're, thinking with lizard brain, and they're not able to make those kinds of equations. It's hard for people. But, when we actually look at what's going to take care of us in the long term, it's almost like if we knew less, it's almost like if we were, I don't want to say ignorant, but just if we were kind of like regressed a little bit, would that actually turn us back to a healthier lifestyle? I mean, earlier you were talking about how, okay, we know how to take care of ourselves and we know how to live longer now, which is awesome. But back, wasn't too long ago, we were only living to 35 years old. And it's kind of this weird balance of like, okay, should we regress? Would that be better for us? Or do we need to like progress, move forward? Is that helping us or killing us? It's such an interesting like dichotomy.
Well, I think it's a mixture of both, right? It's like, that's balance. That's yin and yang, right? And yeah, it takes effort to remain healthy. Being healthy is not a right. I have to remind people that all the time. I
Hmm.
mean, just because you're here doesn't mean you have a right to be healthy. And it's not my job to make you healthy either. It's yours. You better work your ass off for it, which
Hmm.
means it's the choices that you make, the best you can with where you are. But the hard part of that is sometimes people are in situations where they're constrained by their culture or their environment, right? So um, when you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to eat healthy, right? I mean, you're places
Yeah.
where it's easy to pick up, Twinkies in a Yahoo as it is to try to buy like an avocado 3 for $5 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, the whole system is got its issues, but then that doesn't mean you can relinquish control and just give up either, right? Because I mean, it's your body that you have to do. But also, like I said before, it doesn't take a lot of things to make a huge change in your body. Just ask somebody who has a food sensitivity. Like,
Hmm.
if you eat something that you're sensitive to, you can die like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But if you take it away, how much better do you feel? I mean, it's super powerful, like the things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so there is a way that you can make a huge difference in the quality of your life. And it's not easy either, because the thing about the brain is it's designed to take the easy way out. It doesn't like to do things that are hard or difficult because that takes more energy,
Hmm.
right? So you have this instinct first of doing the least amount of effort to accomplish a given task, which some people call cheating. I just think that's really smart. honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what can I do to get from point A to point B, and it's going to be the easiest for me? So
Mm-hmm.
that's survival instinct. But here's what makes us unique as human beings. We have the ability to choose. It's choice. So instinct's going to kick in all the time and say, you know what? It's way easier for me to sit on my ass here and not go to the gym and then make my shake or make my food. But you have to break through that, and then you make that conscious choice to do it.
Yeah.
But then you just do it in baby steps, right? I mean, you just give yourself a check a win box for one small thing, and then you can build up that momentum to try to make a change. You don't have to go for the finish line right out of the gate. And plus, it's difficult too if you're surrounded by people that are like relationship quicksand, right? You're trying to
Mm.
make a change in your life, but you're going back to an environment that's toxic. So one of the
Mm.
phrases that I have posted in my office, and I tell everybody, is that you cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. That means your mental environment, how you talk to your damn self, and then also your relationship environment, your work environment. So if you go home to a toxic relationship, you're probably going to stay sick no matter what I give to you,
Mm. True.
because your body's just being barraged with the negative thought process,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they call that psychoneuroimmunology. Like, how you think changes your nervous system and your immune system. So people stay sick and they can't get well. I see it all the time for people that leave a toxic relationship or leave a toxic job. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I just automatically feel better. Like I lost this anchor over my soul that
Yeah.
needs to do that. And you usually don't come to that point unless you're stricken with an autoimmune disease or chronic disease that nobody can find an answer for, and your lab works come back normal and you're on 50 different medications and nothing is changing. But then
Right.
you have to look deep inside and look at the living, breathing, dynamic human being that is you, or the one that you're working with, because they're not just a piece of meat, there's a human being attached to
Right.
it. So when people say, hey doc, do you think emotions play any kind of role in pain? And I'm like, yeah, if you have chronic pain, there's always an emotional component. You just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I mean, even back to what you were saying with, if you have like a food allergy, or if you have something that you eat the wrong thing that could kill you, it's like, okay, if you eat this, it literally will destroy your body. Do you not think that eating the wrong thing could also potentially cause your back pain, your neck pain, your joint pain? Like, yeah, duh. If you if you like, could suffocate by eating peanut butter because that's how your body reacts to it, other parts of your body could react negatively too, causing all kinds of pain, totally.
Yeah, because you have that immediate death thing, right? Like somebody goes, then if they say allergic to shellfish, right, and they have one,
Right.
and then they go into anaphylactic shock. But you can have what's called a slow death, and then that's what we mean by quality of life, right? It's like,
Right.
yeah, I don't really feel it. Or what happens is you eat something and you don't feel the effects of it until 2 or 3 days later. It's called a delayed
Mm.
onset reaction. And you don't equate the two together, because in medicine, it has to happen like right freaking before in
Right.
order for you to put the puzzle pieces together. Otherwise, why would that have anything to do with something you got 3 days later? Or why would something happen to you when you were 2 years old affect you when you're 35? Because it all matters. That's why.
Right.
But
Right.
we forget that fact, because the two are not causally related, because we're just looking at this from a Newtonian aspect of if A, then B. But the human body works not in Newtonian physics that is logical to explain. It's more quantum
Mm.
based physics, which Einstein called spooky action from a distance. Like I got no freaking idea like how
Right.
it works, and
Right.
he's the one who discovered
Yeah.
that major A equals MC squared. So one of the
Right.
smartest dudes in the universe said, "There's spooky shit that I just can't explain." And that's what we call quantum physics, or energy, of how everything relates to each other, even in your human body or things that are around you, which is another reason why I think of the stuff we're talking about, things with 5G and EMFs and all those things that make a difference. But the course of your whole life makes a difference, because your body's had to adapt and compensate for things that have happened to it over its life, to trying to keep moving forward to the next day.
Mm-hmm.
because it's always trying to keep you out of pain. It's always fighting for you. It's always trying to not have you get sick. You're going to have pain and you're going to get sick. That's called being a human being, but you're not supposed to stay there. That's the point. You're
Right.
supposed to get sick, and then you're supposed to bounce back and get better, assuming that you don't have something deathly like Ebola or something, right? I mean,
Right.
you have to
Right.
keep it categorized in the rationale of common sense. But, if you've got these inflammatory conditions and these neurodegenerative disorders are bigger than ever, more Alzheimer's, more Parkinson's, more
Yeah.
MS, more fibromyalgia, more chronic fatigue, more
Yeah.
Crohn's, more IBS. I mean, you just go down the damn list, and then they've got a drug for this or that to try to mitigate it, which I'm not saying that you shouldn't use those because you don't want people to suffer, but you always have to try to go for the underlying reason of why, not just why it happened so I can give you a medication to get it, but why did the body get to that state where it couldn't take care of itself anymore? And why don't we just blend both of those worlds together?
Right.
Which is my goal, because they each play a role, they each play a part. In helping someone, but unfortunately, sometimes with the specializations, the specialists don't talk to each other, right? I mean, you see it all the time. I'm like, I'm a heart guy. I got no freaking idea what a gastroenterologist does. I'm like, well, you probably should, because there's lymph in your gut that's going to really affect how viscous the blood is, which is going to affect how hard your heart has to beat, which just might give you a heart attack. So
Yeah.
maybe you guys should talk to each other. And that's what infuriates me, because, we even have it in different disciplines, like an orthopedist. I got a shoulder one. I got a knee one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got a spine one. So
Right.
they're really, really focused on here. And then that's cool. But then you should start to play with the other different people that are going to be playing a role in that person's recovery
Right.
and on their way back.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, totally. And I mean, it's hard too, because you only have so much time on planet Earth. I mean, you only have so much time to learn all these different things. And I can get how for people, they feel like, well, do I want to be the jack of all and master of none, or do I want to, actually specialize in something and learn, and be the best at something? And I think that a lot, and I've had these conversations with students and colleagues of mine, that it's like, I'm doing too many different things. I don't know how to help people with all this mix and blend together. I think some practitioners just have a hard time connecting the dots of different things and then knowing how to
Big
look
time.
for stuff. That's really, really hard. It's like, I know there's something there. It's not mechanical in your back. It's like this visceral thing. I don't know what it is, but you should do something different. I've got a friend of mine who tells me, oh yeah, I'm looking into like some surgeries for my back. But, I was asking him questions, and he said, yeah, whenever I get stressed out in life, like my back kind of flares up and it bothers me. And it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Stop right there. Hold on. Think about that for a second. Let's go back to that. Let's connect the dots right there. You get stressed, your back hurts, and somehow that equals surgery. No. Let's rethink this. It's hard for people to try to connect all those dots of what they should be doing, what they should be looking out for.
Well, really, it's honestly, there's so much information, it's overload.
Yeah.
And people study all these different techniques or quote unquote facts, but they're so jumbled up that they don't even know which way to go with it. And because one will say, do it this way, and then they'll say, no, you should do it that way. And they say, this is right or this is wrong. I kind of equate it to when we go for training on different things because we're trying to study. It's like we take something and then we learn it and then we throw it in a closet, right? We throw it in you hear me? We throw it in a closet and just slam the door. And we just do another thing and we slam the door. So there's no organization to it, as opposed to putting it, lining it up inside the closet, organizing with how it might relate to all the other things that you've studied. And, it's honestly, when you step back from it, there's so much information and people are bogged down in that, but they don't understand concepts. And when you understand concepts, it doesn't matter almost what technique you do, because you can do 1,000 techniques once you understand the concept. So that's why I try to explain to people with that system hierarchy from there, right? And then when you really take the time and you go old school and you do a really thorough history and talk to the individual, and you just gave the answer right there of how you can find the answer. You listen to what the hell they're telling you.
Yeah.
Because they'll give you the answer most of the time, as long as you start to listen and then can ask pinpoint questions based on that when you do it. And you have to waste less time with all these examinations and stuff that you do later when you really listen. But in medicine today, I find that we don't really listen so much. We test first and we listen second. And we just throw all these different things and let's see what the tests say, and they show what your result is, but that doesn't tell you anything about how you got it or why you got it or how these things relate to each other. And in medicine, if something is high, we not try to take it low. If it's low, we try to take it high. And you can't do that because everything has a relationship to each other. There's always this give and take. To the left, there's a right. To an up, there's a down. To a right, there's a wrong.
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum in between. And the dirty little secret is it needs to be both. It needs to be like a pendulum. It's never just stuck one way when you do it. So what I try to tell people is, and I've noticed that when I teach, is people want me to tell them exactly what to do, step by step, how to help them back. And I'm like, well, I got news for you. I'm about ready to punch you right in the face because there's no one way that's going to do that. And I'm going to stress you out and freak you out. And that's like Mike Tyson, one of the most brilliant people ever, said, everybody's got a game plan until you get punched in the face. Like, you do what you think is going to help, and it doesn't help.
Yeah.
So then you don't say, oh, that technique doesn't work, or there's not enough research behind it to prove it. I'm like, no, what that means is this. It means, one, it's probably not what that person needs at the moment for their particular thing that you're dealing with. You have to step back, take a different approach, and really listen. And maybe you're either in the wrong spot, right? Which happens all the time.
Yeah.
So many different factors go into it. And one of my central tenets is the faster you make mistakes, the quicker you learn than everybody else. And
that's comforting.
When you're doing a therapy for somebody, right? I mean, you're saying, okay, I'm going to do an assessment. I'm going to see where you are. And then I'm going to do an intervention and I'm going to see what changes. And if I don't get a change on something, then it's not what I needed to do. Like, I expect a big change. And more importantly, I expect the change to last, because also a dirty little secret is almost anything can make you feel better for a little bit. It's like my friend Dan John said, every diet works for about 2 weeks. So then you have to look, okay, well, why did that not stick? Why did it not remain? So then it can be, well, maybe one, the person is doing something when they leave the office that they don't know that they're doing that is making their problem come back again, because they don't know what they don't know. So that's why you have to talk to them about what they do when they leave, right? Or maybe they're supposed to do something that you told them to and they're choosing not to, right? So that's that patient responsibility. Or maybe, just maybe, I'm completely in the wrong spot. Or what I find happens the most, in my opinion, is we give too many things a one shot and we don't know what helps, and many of them counteract each other. Or what happens is, let's say I give somebody 5 things to do. If you give them the 5 things, but you do them in the wrong order, you won't get the same results.
True.
Which means it's not about 1 through 5. It's the position that you have to put those in, so one builds off of the other. So that's why I have that hierarchy that I talk about, where I never do anything on you ever until I check your lymphatic system first, and I do lymphatic system work first. Then I do all of my other stuff, even adjust you or laser you or muscle stem you, because I know all of those things are going to have a desired end result of the effect on the tissues or the cells. And then if I don't have a lymphatic system that's working efficiently, what I just did to you to try to get you better can't go any further because it hits a roadblock on the lymphatic system. Or the brain with your nervous system. So if you were stuck in sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, freak out, overstressed mode, I don't care what you do for a type of therapy with chronic pain, it won't last. It won't stick. Hard stop, period. That means you have to change somebody's lifestyle or habits, or get them into a parasympathetic state, which is where the nervous system can relax and recover. And we call that getting out of defense mode, because you can't heal when you are defending. So if you're always in sympathetic mode where life is kicking your ass, then you have to get them into that relaxation mode so the body can heal. And then once again, it ties back into maybe they're going back to a stressful job or a stressful relationship. And then I'm like, if you really want to get well, you're going to have to try to make some attempts to change some aspect of that for yourself, because we're only going to be able to get you so far, because we're just going to hit a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's interesting. Earlier, you were talking about kind of the soul crushing, I mean, what you're saying right now, if you are in an environment that is emotionally stressful and it's like life draining to you, how that's going to, bleed over into the rest of your body and actually cause a lot of pain, and how it can be really hard to figure that out. And sometimes you do need that huge lifestyle change. And that can be super hard, not only just to admit that to yourself, to actually take action on that once you realize it. Like people can realize I'm in a terrible environment and I've got to get out of this environment. But the actual taking that, tiny little action step to move out, sometimes it's not a tiny little action step. Sometimes it's like move out of your house and quit your job. That can be like ridiculously difficult for people. But at the same time, that could seriously be the best thing. And I think about, do you know Jory Sirota? I don't know if you know him. Yeah. Okay. Jory, I had Jory on a few episodes ago, and he, made a big change moving all the way to Bali. And he was like, this is the best thing for me, literally moving to the other side of the planet and just mixing things up in life. And that really fit some of his needs. And I am like so inspired by that courage for him of saying, I've got to do something different and I need to do it right now. Here we go. Quit, move, go fly over on the other side of the planet, live a different lifestyle, And I mean, you came to that point too, like we were talking about earlier, that point of, getting the fire under you, getting, pain is making you change, with your chiropractic, and realizing I have to actually fix this pain in my body. What is it going to take to get me to make this change to occur in me right now? Maybe it's just something really painful that's actually going to kick me into gear so that I could change lifestyle, environment, get out of that kind of soul crushing, pattern or lifestyle that I'm in, so that I can actually be free in my body, let my systems be free, get out of that, fight or flight, and actually relax for once in my life. That can be a hard, big step for people. But I think that once they have that awareness, and maybe if they have that moment of, I am so sick of this pain, I've just got to do something about it, that action will just be the next step. You've got to fall into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And then some of us are in a situation where it's difficult to do that, but it's easier for some than others. Right. I mean, if you're young and single, and, you can maybe flip up and go to Bali if you want. Right. But if I'm married and I got 3 children I have to take care of, I still have to do my responsibilities as
Right.
a husband and a father and a parent. And I may be miserable with my work, but it doesn't mean that you don't have some semblance of being able to take back control of that, right? Of finding something else in your life that can bring you just a little bit of joy, even if it's a small little nugget that you can begin to work towards. Because human beings, we need purpose. Like that's what happens when people retire. Their death rate skyrockets, right? Because they lose a sense of worth or purpose, and then days just bleed into the next, and you just die from the inside out.
Right.
And so it doesn't take much at all. Right. I mean, it could be just a matter of fact is taking up painting, taking up line dancing, right? I mean, maybe doing something with your spouse that you never did before. Now, if you got a toxic relationship with your spouse, maybe that can help you too, right?
Yeah.
But that's something where you may have to make some adjustments in there as well. But I think one of the things that makes us sick is this feeling of helplessness, like we don't have control. Like one of the biggest stressors for the human body is when it doesn't feel it has a sense of control. That vulnerability to it. And I think that we feel like that in our lives today with the world that we live in, because so many things are coming at us light speed, and we just feel like we don't have control, but you always have control. That's what makes you unique as a human being, to go back to that choice, and how you react to something through the lens that you're looking at it through, right? I mean, it's all about the choices that you can make. I mean, I always reference this, the Rush song, right? It says, if you choose not to decide, you still made a choice. Like, there's always a choice, and not doing something that has its repercussions, right? And the only way you're going to know is if you made the right one, is to actually just make one, because it's going to happen eventually for you regardless. So why not put yourself in the driver's seat a little bit? And that's the same thing with chronic pain. I've been there, right? And had autoimmune, and you feel helpless, and you're looking for someone to rescue you or save you or give you this magic pill or magic movement that's going to take it all away. I mean, if you can find something like that that helps you right away, that's great. But you usually find out it takes a lot more heavy lifting on your part, you might say, in order to keep yourself going that way. But you certainly can. And since I've been dealing with a lot of these, with my practice, I don't see acute pain clients. I see chronic pain. And people that have had, and chronic pain is anything you've had over 6 weeks. That's not going away. But I see people that have autoimmune or chronic disease, and they've been dealing with things for years, 5 years, 10 years, even longer, right? So I kind of have a luxury, honestly, when people come in to see me, because by the time they come in to see me, I know a lot of the usual things, the usual suspects that I would have to look at have probably been ruled out through the testing that somebody done, the MRIs, the x-rays, the physical therapy, the chiropractic, the medicine, because all those things are great. I mean, they help a lot of people, right? It's the ones that it doesn't help, or they stop working, that they end up coming to see me, because that's just the definition of insanity, right? Why the hell am I going to keep doing the same thing and then hoping the body all of a sudden miraculously today decides to let it stick? So my hands are no more magical than somebody else who went to chiropractic school. What I like to think that is different is my brain, like how I think about that concept. So I think being a generalist is the way to go for that, because when you can get good at looking, a generalist is somebody who looks at concepts, right? And you can put puzzle pieces together. So I've started to think of myself lately, and when I teach people, say, I'm not teaching you to be a healthcare professional. I'm really not. I'm trying to teach you to think like an engineer. And an engineer is someone who looks at systems, and they look at how things interact and relate to each other, and how they can be done more efficiently, right? Like a civil engineer, I got to make the most efficient way that you can make this highway system work. And I need to look at all these different things. You can't just look at one concept. And when you think like an engineer, it's a completely different thought process. What I'm trying to teach is a thought process for people. And you can have facts to understand about the parts, but just because you understand about parts and facts doesn't mean you know jack squat about how they work together. Most people don't. And then the thing that's frustrating when people look at this is that you'll find that many times, like we were dealing with from a systems engineer standpoint, you could have a problem at step number 15 that only occurred because there was a glitch at step number 2 that manifested itself at 15. So if you keep looking at 15, you won't find it. And that's the way it is with the human body, where most people are looking at 15 because 15 hurts. And I have to go back and look at all the steps from 1 to 15, because there's probably one small missing thing that compounds. And by the time 15 hits, bam, you get punched in the face, right? But it's something that you would never even think of, because it's so small that it doesn't seem that it's relevant. And that's what gets people and trips people up, because it's those small little things that if you like if you don't have that linchpin in the right spot, then the whole freaking wheel falls apart, right?
Right.
And that's the part that I honestly find that many people don't want to take the time to freaking figure it out, because it's not
Yeah.
easy. They
Yeah.
want me to give them the cookie cutter thing to do. Can you give me my rehab sheet for the knee?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not. That's not me. I won't do that. Like, I'm not saying that your corrective exercise sheet for your knee won't work. I'm the guy you see when it doesn't work anymore. Then I'm
Right.
going to ask you, I want you to think a little bit. And in my world, it started with something just as big. It seems so simple now, but when I looked at it the first time, I'm like, holy Hannah, how did I not look at it like that way? If I got a chronic knee problem, maybe it's coming from my ankle or my hip on the same side.
Right.
Like, the ankle doesn't move, so the knee moves more, and then it hurts. And I moved the ankle and the knee felt better. I'm like, this is awesome, right? Or maybe the hip doesn't move. They call that upstream or call it downstream. So you start there. If that doesn't help, then you need to think a little bit bigger and say, holy cow, there's a whole other knee on the other side. Maybe that side can affect the side that hurts. Then you start to investigate there. But then when you do that and you say, you know what? Maybe the knee hurts because I've got some underlying inflammatory process in my body that's just inflaming this joint above
Mm-hmm.
all others because it's had some prior trauma in the past to it. And the vulnerability, your body will seek out the weakest point in your body to break it.
Yeah.
Not the strongest. So if somebody, for instance, has underlying chronic inflammation in the gut or irritable bowel syndrome or something like that, then they can feel significant pain in the knee.
Mm-hmm.
Because the knee is the most vulnerable joint in their body, and it's just reacting to the chronic inflammation in the gut. And that's the person where, if you give them a little bit of nutritional guidance or you do some visceral work on the knee, they come back, you say, Doc, that's the craziest freaking thing I've ever seen. But could my knee feel better when all I did was change how I eat? Yes. And how would I know that? I'm going to do a complete thorough history on you, and I'm going to look at all the systems, check boxes that you did when you came in to see me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a novel idea. How about I press on your abdomen and see if you don't like it?
Yeah.
Just like I would press on your knee.
Yeah.
And see if you don't like it. But I have one central tenet when you come in to see me for anything that hurts. I check there and I press on everything else in your body as well, from your pinky toe to the top of your head, even your ear. And you better not have pain on any place that I push. Zero. The more places that I push that hurt, the more systemic full body inflammation issues that you have. But I'm also going to contend that, say, for instance, that you come in with your chronic right knee that's been hurting you for a year. Everybody's done your knee. We know it's not a tumor there. We know there's not a tear that needs surgery, that like I've got all this stuff. I don't know what it is. I'm going to press on your knee and it'll probably hurt, but it might not. And then I'm going to press everywhere else. And then I'm going to find a spot on you. Let's just say arbitrarily, it could be on the left-hand side of your rib cage, right by your spleen and your oblique muscle on the left-hand side. And I push there and you jump off the table. What I'm going to contend in my world is I bet you that's the reason that your knee hurts.
Yeah, it's true.
But you didn't know it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. And just contrasting again, one time I got a little bit sick. I had kind of like a really bad cold and a cough that I was dealing with, and my back was hurting. I just had like the common cold and my back was bothering me, which right away I was like, oh, there's a system. I got a system, lymph, something's going on. And I remember I went into my physician and I was like, okay, hey, and it was a new physician. I'd never been into this guy before. My healthcare was changing. So brand new physician I was seeing. Nice guy. But I told him, hey, I feel like there might be something interesting going on with my organs. I kind of want to get that checked out. Can you take a look at that? And he said, sure thing. Here, lie on the table. And he kind of took his hands and it just like pressed 3 times super lightly across. And he was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong. And I was like, wait, you like barely touched me. You didn't even touch anything else. And it was like, immediately it clicked in my brain back then when that happened, like, oh, I have to figure this out on my own. He doesn't know how to do this. I think
Right.
I think he just was like maybe being nice. He didn't really get it. And it's like, you've got to have somebody who can actually go through and knows what it means, like, oh, I can feel that your spleen is enlarged right now because, oh yeah, you had mono, and oh, okay, maybe and you were just sick a while ago. Okay, so lymph, let's press on some of your lymph nodes. Let's understand this and check in these different systems. It's like, you've got to do that hard work, like we were saying earlier, of actually taking care of yourself and actually taking care of your body. It's not a right. You have to do that work. And that was for me, like, yeah, I have to do that work myself. I can't expect my doctor to know what this is because he doesn't. I've got to figure this out,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is
I mean,
crazy.
I know it's a lesson you just learn by living through it, right? And it's also a testament too about how many people get very nervous or freaked out when they have to do anything around the abdomen.
Yeah.
They don't feel comfortable pressing in there or feeling in there, and you should, because it's just like any other part of the body, right? But the more you're in this healthcare profession, the more you're gonna hopefully hone your observation skills. So um, you can feel tissue tone and quality when you do it, right? And many different things from there. But I go less and less by what I feel, and I go more and more about what I see. So
Hmm.
what I mean by that is that I don't really care what I feel where my finger is. What I do is I'll watch how the person responds to where my finger is.
Oh, that's interesting.
So let's say that I put my hand very lightly on your right rib cage. I can already observe that your nervous system starts to freak out a little bit, which means
Hmm.
there's an underlying vulnerability. There's something it doesn't like. And then I know that it's trying to compensate and protect that region by doing anything and everything it can to protect it,
Hmm.
even jacking your freaking back up.
Hmm.
And then the harder I press, the more I can observe your physical reactions of where you go into states of withdrawal. And they're neurological sympathetic dominant signs, where you stop breathing or you start to sweat or body tenses up, or I see your head move, your eyes move, all these sorts of different things that show that your nervous system is in a state of threat and vulnerability.
Hmm.
That's the area that I'm going to go to first. I'm going to go to the one where the one that you show me you don't want me there the most in relationship to how your nervous system reacts to. And it doesn't have to be pain, because pain is subjective. It's no objectivity to pain at all. Some people can take massive amounts of pain and won't show you any symptoms. It's fine. But other people, you can't hide these survival instincts that show up because you don't know that you're doing them.
Hmm.
And so I don't really go by what I feel anymore. I watch.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm palpating with people, they'll tell me, oh, yeah, that feels fine. And I can see them squirming or something. And if I feel in there, it feels fine to me. And they'll verbally tell me, yeah, that feels fine. I don't have any pain there. But yeah, you're right. If I watch them, if I were to look up at their face where they are, and I were to see, yeah, you just scrunched up your face. Your face doesn't look fine. Why is it that when I press in here, that's like a face trigger scrunch
Mm-hmm.
up reaction button? That's totally true. Yeah, how people
Yeah, and
change
then
like
you
that.
also have to press in stuff long enough, because what'll happen is the body lays down edema for protection. So it'll put swelling around something to pad it.
Hmm.
And if you press into something and say, does that hurt? They'll say no. Well, it probably won't, because there's inflammation around there to a significant degree to keep it protected. So you
Hmm.
have to keep your pressure going in for 10 seconds. Then it'll show up.
Hmm. Yeah.
You see
Yeah.
that in backs all the time,
Hmm.
right? Like around a low back, I'll press in and they're like, I mean, unless they're really acute, but it's those chronic ones, it's the protection. Then I'll press in and then I'll just leave it there. And I'll push the fluid out after about 10 seconds. Then all of a sudden they hit the roof. So
Hmm.
it's just about observation skills, and it's changing your pressure. You always go in super light then you gradually go in, but then you change the pace, the intensity, you tap, you go circles. You got to do different things to watch how the body reacts to there, but also other areas of the body that move when you touch a region. So that will tell you compensation and adaptation pattern for protection. So let me give you an example. It's something I teach in my courses where, let's say that you don't have any idea that your left calf hurts because you don't feel anything. But meanwhile, I'm doing my examination and I press in your left calf along the inside border, and I press in, and I know it starts to hurt you. And then all of a sudden I press in harder. And what I want to watch is I want to watch which body part you move the most in reaction to that pressure. So for instance, somebody might really, really move that right arm, right? They may move their right elbow and flex it up like a bicep muscle, or they'll bring their right shoulder, their right trap up to their ear, like they're doing like this.
Yeah, totally.
So what I know is this. Well, that's a strategy that your body uses all the time to protect that calf. So what that means is that you can have an issue with your right trap and everybody's digging into your right trap. And meanwhile, I'm going to go down to your left calf because I know your right trap contracts to protect your left calf. You just didn't know your left calf hurt consciously, but your brain knew it subconsciously that it always has the potential to hurt. So it just jacks up that right trap ever so much all day long, 24/7 as a protective mechanism. Then all of a sudden you got chronic pain on your right trap. So the body will always show you, always. And here's the thing. Not everybody's going to react the same way. I could squeeze your calf and you move your right shoulder to your right ear. And then I could do somebody else, and then they bring their right knee up towards their chest. They flex in their right hip. That's their pattern.
Yeah, that is
so
interesting.
Then what I'm going to know is well, maybe you got some issues on your right hip because it's trying to protect something on the left-hand side. Because the thing with the body is this: the body's only concerned with protecting itself in the moment that it's in. It doesn't care about the next 5 seconds. It doesn't care about tomorrow. It doesn't care whether it's the right or the wrong strategy, because what people need to understand is there is no right strategy. There is no wrong strategy for the body. There's only a useful strategy. What that means is this: there's no right or wrong when it comes to what the body does in relationship to how it moves. It only does what it feels is useful. And we may not understand and say, that's not useful at all. Well, actually it is. Otherwise the body wouldn't be doing it. But it has to deal with right then and there. Right then and there, it does whatever the strategy it needs to or thinks is the best to protect you the most. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the most efficient, right? But often it is. We just don't understand it because we're coming at it from our linear standpoint on why it chose to do what it was doing. So it's trying to protect you with one thing by overusing another. And then very often that's why people don't get better, because we chase the compensations and adaptations that people come in with, and we miss that underlying big driver. Then the body gets caught in this loop of protection, and then it goes back to the neuroplasticity where you grooved a new map of protection that just got stuck there. And that's what you have to reset so the brain can have a new map to do it. But the only way you're going to find that pattern is one, you can watch somebody move, but two, you got to get your hands on somebody. And I think that that's a lost art in the world today of doctors putting their hands on patients and being able to clinically assess things and touch things and then come out with a working diagnosis before you test. This testing is supposed to confirm a diagnosis that you have, not give it to you. So you should go in and say, this is what I'm thinking it might be, not run 500 different tests and see what comes back. And then the world today, most of them come back normal.
Mm. Yeah. And
Right.
I mean, if you're the patient coming in, you always feel good. You know, people always tell me stories. Oh, I went in, I saw that doctor. I told him what I had. He looked right at me. And in 5 seconds, he said, I know exactly what it is. It's this. And it's like, well, how did he know that? Like, you just told him a list of symptoms. Like, I feel like he maybe fired off too soon there. I'm going to check some things out. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. And confession for me, I fell in the same trap I think a lot of people fall into, of just not listening to people. Like I used to get the notes in on an email, or I'd read someone's paper. Oh, back pain. Okay, I know what it is. It's got to be their hip flexors. Their hip flexors are tight, obviously. We have to strengthen their glutes. And it's like I would just get into my cookie cutter mindset, and I had to force myself. Wait a minute, sit down, listen to what on earth this person is saying right now. Don't just read their chart and go right to the, whatever the most recent thing was I read on back pain and instantly assume it's that. I've got to actually listen to this person and then, do a thorough investigation to find out what on earth it is that they actually have going on. Don't just make a whole bunch of, judgments or assumptions, create my agenda before I even know what's going on. It's easy to fall into that, and I appreciate you saying how important it is to listen. I appreciate you saying how, people need to actually do good investigation. You're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, they do. And sadly, in the healthcare model of today, it's really hard to do that because, doctors, I think a lot of them want to do that, but they're in a crunch time with so many patients in a short period of time, and like 10 minutes with a person, if that. Yeah. And then, they've got mandates for notes and insurance out the wazoo. And, I have a luxury where I have a 90-minute new patient visit, but I'm all cash. Like I can take the time that I need to with you, right? But I also understand the world that we live in, like the time constraints that we have. I think I read somewhere that the average time it takes when a person comes in and starts talking to the doctor, by the time the doctor starts talking to them and tell them what's wrong with them, is like 30 seconds.
Wow.
Right. And, what happens too is it goes both ways. The person becomes their diagnosis. They become the label that we give to them, and they get stuck there because of they're supposed to have all these symptoms when they have this quote unquote thing. And then we become locked in the normal way of treating that diagnosis. So I expect to have the symptoms and you get diagnosed with this, then we're going to give you what is supposed to help with this diagnosis. And we don't treat the individual. We don't treat the person.
Yeah. So
for me, the underlying causes of all these chronic diseases is, one, chronic stress, which causes chronic inflammation. And that chronic inflammation will manifest itself in different ways in different people. So I'll have chronic inflammation and you may get chronic fatigue syndrome. Somebody else will have chronic inflammation and they'll get Parkinson's. So it's the same damn thing. You just got a different manifestation of it based on some of your genetic markers and how triggers got pulled for you and your individual history and stuff like that. But you still have to go to that underlying inflammatory process that you're dealing with there. And then it doesn't really matter what the diagnosis is, they all start to improve when you get to that underlying, like a causative factor of reducing the inflammation that we have. And once again, we're coming back to the lifestyle habits and behaviors and what's causing inflammation with the toxicity in our life, or mental and physical and environmental, and the ability for the human body to actually get rid of the toxicity from the mental ones. Do you have someone in your life that you can talk to? Do you have time that you spend with yourself? Or are you around toxic individuals and you can't let that mental toxicity go? Or you have the toxicity that's coming into you from, the food that you take and the stuff that you put on your skin and the chemicals and things like that. Can stuff get out through your detoxification systems? One of them being your lip. The other one is pee. Can you poo? Do you sweat? Through your breath, through all those areas, you got to be able to get rid of those
Yeah.
things. So,
Yeah.
my approach to healthcare is pretty simple. If you have chronic disease, right? I know two things. You have too much toxicity, not enough nutrients.
Hmm.
That means you can't get good stuff in, and you can't get bad stuff out, or you have too many bad stuff coming in that you can't even get good stuff
Hmm.
in. And if you don't take care of those two things, then, well, of course you're not going to get well, because the only time you stay sick is when you lose the ability to make new cells in your body that work. That's it. Like, if you can make new cells that work, you're not sick.
Hmm.
Or if you get sick, you don't stay sick because you made new cells, right? And then that's called recovery and regeneration and vitality and resilience and life.
Yeah.
But you got to get rid of the toxins first before you can ever get nutrients going into anything.
Yeah.
So it's about reducing toxicity and then getting the nutrients in. What most people do is they try to slam nutrients in without getting toxins out first. And then it won't work.
Hmm.
It won't, because they got nowhere to go. So that's an order thing that you need to do. And then that's why I focus on the lymph, because it's the number one system that reduces toxicity in the body that people aren't doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So how about you do that first?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're totally right. You said something earlier a second ago that I wanted to touch on again, because I thought it was just so huge. You were talking about treating the person and not the condition, and immediately that makes me think of Patch Adams. I don't know if you've watched that movie or read that book,
Yeah.
Gesundheit, or you totally make me think of him and what you're talking about right now. But it also brings up just that idea, like you were saying a second ago, the stress is causing so many problems for people. And just that idea of play, one of the things that I love about you that also is inspiring to me is just how fun everything is in your work. You've got mojo, and, everything is kind of like a fun little play aspect that you're doing. And it looks like, just how if I were to walk in your office and if I were to go to your seminars, or it's just like my imagination is that this is not like a formal doctor where I have to like sit up straight and be all polite and formal. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to goof off. We're going to tell jokes. We're going to have fun. And it's like having that kind of interaction with a client, being able to play with the client in the office, you're like immediately taking down walls, taking down stress. You're making them feel comfortable. Hey, I'm a real person too. You're a real person. Great. We're both people. That's awesome. And then you're just having that relationship, having fun and treating people. And back to David Weinstock, I feel like I didn't learn how to play until I started doing NKT. I think
Yeah.
that was when it finally clicked for me that like, oh, wow, this person is totally going to be like mind blown when they figure this out and they see that that muscle's not working and we're connecting the dots with that. They're going to walk out of here feeling so much better. I'd get all excited, and
Right.
it suddenly work became this play zone for me, and everything changed in how I worked with people. And
Well,
so it's
that's
just,
a really powerful realization that you had there, because David's one of the best humans on the planet. We've
oh,
been
yes, he
friends for
is. Yeah.
many, 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 many years. Yeah, see, that's a big part of what I do, because one, I'm just being me, right? And I like to be playful. But I read a great quote once. There's zero correlation between appearing to be serious and actually being good at what you do.
Hmm.
Because I have a lot of people that are very serious and they don't know how to do jack squat.
Yeah.
And I've had people message me saying, "Oh, I'm not going to get your stuff because you use the word mojo in it, like it's not serious." I'm like, well, that's your loss, man. That's too bad for your patient,
Yeah.
because you're closing your mind. There's a reason I use the word mojo. One, because it's different. I want to stand out, and there's way too much seriousness in healthcare today. It doesn't mean you can't be empathetic and you can't be really good at what you do. David's a good example of that.
Yeah.
And then, but mojo means magic, which means it's magic and changing another person's life with some very simple interventions. The magic of changing another person's life by how you interact with them and talk with them and smile with them. But
Yeah.
mojo also means voodoo, which means sometimes I got no idea why my stuff works. It just works. Maybe some of it works because I use that connection, that bonding there. And then play is really important.
Yes, it
Like,
is.
if you study the brain, I learned this from a neuroscientist many years ago, where I remember mentioned about how the not being in control is stressful, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
another way to look at that is uncertainty. So uncertainty is the biggest stressful for the human brain, because the human brain is a predictive brain, which means it gathers information to predict what's going to happen next, which helps it come from a standpoint of certainty.
Hmm.
So it uses sensory input to predict what's happening next. That's why when you have poor sensory input, you have poor motor output, because your brain doesn't know what's coming next. So it's uncoordinated movement, right? And so uncertainty is a huge stressor. But the human brain, the dichotomy is this: the human brain needs uncertainty. Otherwise, it gets bored really fast, because it falls into habitual patterns and it rusts away, right? So it needs uncertainty, but it doesn't like it at the same time. What to do, what to do, what to do. Well, nature has a built-in answer for that. The human brain and body love uncertainty. This is very important that people are listening to this part.
Okay.
It loves uncertainty when there's a background of safety associated with it. Which means you can throw things at me that I'm not sure when it's coming, but I feel safe when you do it. And there's one thing that transfers across all animal kingdoms in the world that gives the answer and develops that ability to become resilient, react to the environment that you're in, and be okay with uncertainty. And it's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
Play. That's, if you see animals, that's how they learn to socialize and integrate, and they learn to move. That's how we do it when we're younger. You learn the parameters of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And there's no wrong way to play. That's really important. So we get into corrective exercise movements and we say you're doing it wrong or you're doing it right. I disagree with that. You're just doing it different. But play is a big part of rehabilitation and recovery and decreasing stress, because you have uncertainty, but you're not freaking out about it, right? It's a different kind of uncertainty that if I quit my job, I'm going to get a different job tomorrow, right? That's an uncertainty. One of the biggest stressors in human life is not knowing where you're going to get your next meal from, like finances. That's one of the biggest stressors in life, and they end most relationships. So, but that background of safety is what you need to foster when somebody's in their environment with you in your office or your rehab. And one of the ways that you can foster that safety, when I'm trying to help these people in chronic pain, is not by going to a 4-day seminar and I'm getting all these facts listed down. I'm going to put you through these 15-step processes that you're probably not even going to do 2 of them. Is that I'm going to use the word mojo, and I'm going to play with you and not be so serious about different things, because I'm connecting with you as a human being, and I'm helping to get that background of safety, and then you begin to feel better at the same time. So I don't have a problem with people that don't get my approach to things and how I talk. And if you follow me on Instagram, I'll drop some curse words every now and then, or I'll do different things, and I won't talk like quote unquote your normal doctor, whatever the hell that means. I'm just trying to relate to what we all have in common, is that we're human beings. When we cut, we bleed, we want to be accepted. We don't want to be alone. We all want to be loved, and we don't want to be in pain, right? I mean, how can you go wrong with that approach?
Yeah. That is like ridiculously profound what you've just been, you're preaching the mojo truth right here. And I appreciate that. That's incredible to hear all of those things said. I was just getting coffee with a bunch of friends of mine yesterday morning, and we were literally talking about the aspects of friendship. And we were talking about how in a group of friends, you've got to, what's the difference between, your friends, your acquaintances, you're able to make that transfer into the realm of play and depth. And, you've got to have that balance of, we are super deep together. We're pouring out everything in our heart and soul and, your struggles together, but then you're also playing. If you have somebody who only ever just tells you like, hey, you know what, I want to shoot you straight. You did something wrong the other day and I'm telling you that because I'm your friend. If you only ever have that person, well, that person's like they're being critical, they're judging. And even though you might need that, you need that fire under your butt. You need somebody to kick you in the pants every once in a while. If you only ever get that from that person, then you just feel like you've got this policeman for a friend. You've got somebody who's just always cracking down on you, cracking the whip. If you don't also have that component of play and fun and that lightheartedness, that's where you know that this person is telling me something serious because they love me and because they're my friend, right? That's what actually creates that friendship. And that's so huge when you're in the office with somebody, because it can be so easy as a practitioner to be like, wrong, 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 wrong. You have to change everything in your life. Everything the way you think is incorrect. And people will feel like, oh my gosh, he's just so like, oh, I just felt judged, or I felt, oh, it was too serious. It was like painful to hear all the things in my life, like being undone. And me, even though maybe people need to hear these truths, they come in, they've got, chronic illness, and they need to hear some really important truths. But if you don't have that play, if you don't have that relationship with the person, then it's like, oh, did this person actually care about me? Or what does this truth mean? What is the value of this truth about my life if it was said in a context that wasn't some kind of caring, empathetic, I'm a person, you're a person kind of context? Then it can almost make somebody could hear, oh, I know that that's the right thing for me, but you know what? Screw that person. I'm not going to do whatever they said. And it's like you just lost the validity of whatever the truth was you shared with that person.
That's very true. Yeah, there's three pretty powerful things I can expand on that with you. I read a great quote from one of my mentors in my life, who was kind of one of the original positive thinking kind of self-improvement gurus. His name is Jim Rohn.
Okay.
Rohn. And he said a quote once, and I changed it up a little bit, which I usually end up doing with things. He said, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with in your life." And I said, you might want to change that to the top 4, because you're number 1, which means you spend the most time with yourself. Yeah. So you got to make sure that you don't crack the whip on your damn self so much either. That means lighten the hell up, right? And the other one is expanding on something I learned from Thomas Myers of the anatomy train. When somebody comes in to see us, we're so ready to list, okay, I found what's wrong with you. And one of his central tenets is he never, ever starts to tell you anything that can need improvement until he tells you 3 things that are really great on you now first. So he says, so you've got this here, your glutes are awesome, man. They're rock solid on, right? You pick 3. I don't care what, because it's the rule of 3, right? The rule of 3. And the other one is this, that you learn from the brain. The brain is always hardwired to look at negative first.
Yeah, that is so true.
It will never, ever look at the positive first, because it's designed to look at negative because it wants to anticipate that it won't die, and it'll go negative first because you only got 1 chance in the wild to get that wrong. So what I mean by that is, if you're out in the woods and you hear something rustling in the woods, you better think, I'm dinner, that's a tiger.
Yeah, right.
Right? As opposed to, oh, that's probably just my friend Joe messing around.
Yeah.
And because I'm going to think zippity doo dah, unicorns and rainbows pie. But if it was the tiger, well, then you lived, right? Like, because I'm like, oh, good. But even if you got it wrong and it was Joe, at least you're not dead,
Right.
right? So that's back to instinct and choice. So the instinct first for all humans is negativity. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a person. The difference is the choice after that. The difference is the choice after that. So it's, as I said before, first instinct, then choice. Some people, they're negative, stinking, thinking, chronic, vampires that suck the ever-living soul out of you with how they view everything from a negative standpoint, and they pinpoint all the things that is wrong about you. That's why I said top 4, because most of the time you'll do it to yourself. You'll never talk to another human being most of the time like you talk to yourself, unless you're on social media. Then you'll just say whatever the hell you want, because you got nobody there that can punch you in the face when you say it.
True. Yeah. Seriously.
So that's another reason why the world is so toxic today, because we feel that we can just say whatever we want on there with no repercussions. And then you're seeing those repercussions come in the sickness of other human beings who take in the stress of trolls on social media or bullies on social media. And we're getting sicker with our youth today because of that very thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. I actually just recently changed I changed a lot of things, but I was kind of taking in what messages I get on a daily basis, and then realizing what messages I say to myself. I had a day where I was, in the office, then interacting with a bunch of other people, and I just kept getting these positive messages. Brandon, you did a great job. That was awesome. Hey, thanks for showing up here early. Oh, you made everything feel better. That was great. And at the end of the day, I was like, I got a ton of positive messages, and somehow I'm still feeling like crap and telling myself negative messages. Why am I doing that to myself? Like, why not take in these positive messages and be that, a friend that's influencing myself in a positive way? And actually recently took the screensaver on my iPad, because I do a lot of reading on my iPad, and I changed the background to have a whole bunch of just positive messages, and it was like, oh my gosh, I need that in my brain so much. You've got nothing to prove. You are lovable. You are, somebody who, your needs are important, and all these different things. And I got that list from actually just like my spiritual community, people who are like, this is the way that Jesus is going to view you. You should put that into your mind every day. And I was like, dude, that is so just like mind blowing, thinking this is the message I should send to myself. Why do I ever send myself those negative messages? That's like totally destroying, myself. That's so, self-sabotage. And what you're talking about with bullying online, people can just like let it rip online all the time. And there, back to that like psychosocial factor, just like your environment, you're going to try to survive. You need people around you because that's important to your survival. It's like, if you're interacting with somebody online, there's that disconnect of, oh, I don't know if this person's important to my survival, so, screw you, like, whatever, I'm just going to say anything. And it's like, oh, that value of a human being gets lost, and it's so sad.
It does. Well, you can see the power of negative versus positive thought energy on movement and performance and strength. So one of the things that I tell people is that strength isn't built, it's granted to you by your nervous system. So your nervous system will grant you strength when it feels safe and resilient. If it feels threatened, it'll actually take it away from you. And anybody who's listening, especially who does muscle testing from any type, but definitely NKT or AK or whatever, we do this little brain hack all the time where you test somebody's initial strength on a muscle test. And then I usually test it really hard on this one. Like, I don't give a crap what you do. You can clench your jaw and hold your breath and squeeze your sphincter. I don't really care what you do,
right?
Because it won't matter. It won't matter whatsoever. That I'll test it, and then I'll have you focus on some toxic negativity in your life. It could be a person, it could be a catastrophic loss or a heartache. And as soon as you focus on that, I'll retest your strength in any test you want. I don't care if it's a full body pattern or a single muscle. And you won't be able to hold it no matter what you do.
Wow.
You won't be able to hold it because your nervous system just tanks.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll just have you do the opposite, where you'll think of something in your life that lights up your heart, lights up your soul, brings you joy. It could be a loved one, right? Or someone either past or present. And you focus on that person. And then all of a sudden, I can't move you no matter what I do. Like, I mean, you're strong like bull. And then I'll immediately have them think of the negative again, and they'll immediately get weaker again. It blows their freaking mind because they're strong and then they're weak. They're strong and they're weak. And I tell people that you just learn the difference between physiological strength and neurological strength. They're two different things.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people how you think changes your biology. And if you want to be an elite athlete, the most elite athletes are the ones that can master from the neck up. With a thought process. And then that also should sink into you this message. If you know that thinking like that has that much effect on your body, why would you ever let another human being have that much control over your body?
Yeah,
so then
seriously.
you let all those things go that somebody sends. Like when I get messages on, social media or feedback, I always take in constructive criticism because I'm trying to be better. But I dismiss the toxic ones. I just hit delete and I let them go. I used to focus on those a lot, but it seriously began to affect my health because, I was one of the original instructors with NKT many, many years ago. And I had to quit teaching because I got sick. I remember because Kathy and I were actually teaching our level 2 in New York many years ago. I think it's 5 years ago, something like that. And then I had to leave on the second day because I just had so much brain inflammation that I couldn't put thoughts together anymore, and I wasn't able to teach or practice for a year. And then I started to pay attention to how my body reacted to stress in general. And then I would start to get, when I started to recover, I was much more body aware. And when I would let some comment on Facebook or something get to me, I would say, oh my God, you know what? I'm starting to manifest the physiological symptoms I had when I was sick, when I would let that foster.
No way.
And I knew at that moment that I had to let those go if I ever stood any chance of regaining my health. And it's something that I honestly wish that every human being could have a barometer of a symptom like that they would get if they could notice right away what happens to their body when they let those things affect them over time, begins to slowly break them down over time. And it's very powerful when you can experience that, how physiology changes from that instant thought process of taking stuff in and letting it fester, or letting it go and maybe coming from a standpoint of yourself from a place of a little bit more empathy or love for whoever, even yourself, to let it go. Because I knew that if I didn't, I was not going to come back.
Yeah. Gosh, I almost feel like I got to sit with that. That is so heavy to hear you say that. It's powerful
people
for
who
my
get
life.
really, really sick will usually end up discovering that. And I've seen a lot of people who've been through really difficult diseases and chronic disease, and they're still going through it and come back and survive cancer. Even myself, I've survived that, and through really bad hardships that, kept you down, knocked you down, and you just felt like you wanted to give up, but they came back. Not a single one ever said they regretted going through it. If anything, they were very thankful that they went through it. And I was the same way. And when I was in it, I didn't see it. But at the end, I was, because it brought me back to one of the things that it taught me of what to truly be grateful for, but also how to pay attention to the things that are always the things that you're noticing now they didn't notice before, but they were always there. You just didn't see them. Like,
Mm,
you don't see things as they are, you see things as you are,
mm.
right? That's classic case that you'll discover. Like, people are listening. If I remember the first time you did the NKT, you're like, holy cow, like, mind blown.
Right.
Once it expanded, it'll never go back to the same way again.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it's true. Well, Perry, I want to thank you for the message that you're sending so many people. I mean, you're giving people awesome messages about their body, awesome messages to tell them in their brains. You're giving people ideas about, less is more, and the body is going the path of least resistance. And you're helping people understand so many different mechanics about their body. And I feel like I could talk to you for a really long time, because it's amazing hearing all of your thoughts. And I know that you got to go do things today, and at some point I've got to go do things today too. But gosh, you have so much incredible wisdom, and I just really, really appreciate, the thoughts that you brought to this conversation. I feel like I've got to go sit with this, like sit under a tree with my notepad for a while, and rethink more things about my life and my practice and what I'm doing with people. It's a big impact on me hearing what you have to say, on your podcast and your blogs and your videos. And I just really appreciate the specific things you've been able to bring to this conversation and tell me today. It's huge for me, and I know it's going to be huge for a lot of other people. So I just thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate that, and I'm really glad to hear about going under the tree part. So that's good. Yeah, make sure you take your shoes off and you ground yourself a little bit, but as well. And yeah, I mean, I really had a great time. I'm thankful that you let me expand on a lot of things that we were able to get into than what people might normally hear, which is pretty cool. And be able to share some of the experiences that I've gone through and the people that I've been able to help. It's a good time for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, much appreciation, much love. Stay on the line here. We'll keep talking. But folks, thanks for listening to this conversation with Perry.